Good evening, everyone. I'm the Oracle and I welcome you to the Easter edition of the Oracle's Lounge Live. Tonight's show is decidedly more low-key than normal. Freddie is off, and instead of doing the show from our studio, we're broadcasting from the Comeback Inn on Spring Street. The reason we're handling things a bit differently tonight is because our guest is Jesus Christ, and I wanted a relaxed and subdued environment in which to have a one-on-one conversation. Jesus, thank you for joining me this evening.
Thank you, Oracle. I'm pleased to be in Jeffersonville.
How have you been?
I've been better, actually. There's an awful lot going on in the world, some of it in my name, that I don't condone.
Anything you care to discuss?
There are several things. As a matter of fact, when I visited Jerusalem for the final time, I cleansed the temples, casting out the money changers. Look at many of the mega churches of today. They have food courts. They have gift shops. They strike me as being more about commerce than about God. Earlier this year in Atlanta, Pastor Eddie Long had himself coronated king. King of what? How could such cheap theatrics be on behalf of God? How is it possible that people could still look at this man and have any confidence that his words to them represent the truth? Think back to 1985 when Oral Roberts said God would call him home if he didn't raise $8 million for Oral Roberts University in 3 months. There are a couple of things that bother me about this. First of all, since when does God have to resort to blackmail? Second, this man acted as if being called to the kingdom of heaven was a threat. Here you have a man supposedly ministering to people that heaven is their ultimate goal, and then he fears being summoned by his creator. I don't quite feel like this was a man who was on my side.
Are there other things bothering you?
Regrettably, there are. There is an awful lot of hate being brought forth in my name. Whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me. Who are you, as mortal man, to stand in judgment of God's other children? Who are you to decide who's worthy of God's love? I believe the words were, "Judge not, lest ye be judged." I think you people need to do a better job remembering that.
That reminds me of something I read recently. An essay that looked at what you might think about healthcare reform in this country.
I fed the hungry and healed the sick. The United States claims to be the greatest nation on earth, yet there are millions of U.S. citizens society has forgotten about. Children go hungry and lack access to doctors. People who risk their lives in defense of your nation live on the streets, wondering where their next meal will come from. I honestly don't care how you do it, but I tell you that a society that doesn't care for its people isn't much of a society. I think it's pretty damning that Cuba does a better job than the United States of providing health care to its people. Listen, when I arose from the dead, I sought out Peter and gave him 3 instructions. Feed my lambs, tend my sheep, feed my sheep. Caring for my flock means more than preaching to it. It means ensuring that basic needs are met. Feed the hungry, care for the sick, clothe the naked, educate the ignorant. Perhaps some of the most basic, and most valid, criticisms of Christianity come from those who very clearly see that the behavior of many of its practitioners is so different from what I tried to teach 2,000 years ago. Do you really think someone needs a crystal cathedral from which to preach the truth? Do you really believe I'm impressed with worldwide satellite networks that claim to bring the word of God from hideous, gaudy sets, where pastors exchange prayer for cash? How can one possibly think about that long without reaching the conclusion that it's akin to a brothel with Bibles? Some of these church services today resemble bad fashion shows and missed block parties. How does this help effect change in the world? Can anyone show me the benefit of this or how it follows in the footsteps of my ministry?
There are those who believe a great change, perhaps the end of the world, will take place on December 21st, based on the Mayan calendar. Care to shed any light on that?
Do you like a good mystery? Me too. Listen, only God knows when the world will end. In your terms, the world is infinite. In mine, it's not. Several billion years from now, your sun will shed its shell. Earth will be incinerated and that will be the end. What happens between now and then is God's business. Until then, the best thing you can do is to care for one another. Perhaps actually show some humanity toward your fellow man. When I ministered, I walked the countryside in a robe and sandals. My hands and feet got dirty. I was sunburned. I often had dust caked to my face and in my hair. I shared the truth with people one-on-one. I didn't seek out society's elite. I often ministered to the scorned, the forgotten. I touched them. We ate meals together. I showed them compassion. Life isn't easy. It's even more difficult when you're disconnected. Why are you not content to see so many go without care?
Any final thoughts?
Certainly. Stop being so gullible. Quit putting your faith in second-rate showmen and third-rate magicians and have faith in God. Quit looking to me for excuses for bigotry and hatred and accept the fact that God expects you to love all of his children. I see at least a small number of people who profess their belief in me, yet they are anti-Semitic. I am a Jew, for crying out loud. How about actually caring for one another? I don't expect perfection, but I'm alarmed at the absolute lack of effort in some quarters. The United States Constitution makes a very clear distinction between church and state. I think that's a very wise thing. Given man's shortcomings in interpreting and enforcing his own law, you're much better off not trying to interpret and enforce God's. Leave that to God.
That's our show for tonight. I thank Jesus Christ for being my guest. Please join me at 9 p.m. on Sunday, April 15th, when Freddie returns and our guest is Jeffersonville Redevelopment Director Rob Waiz. I am the Oracle, and I am gone.